Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. It's March 1945. Europe is just, well, our sources describe it as bleeding, exhausted, and half ruined.
Mm-hmm. The end of the war in Europe feels close, but it isn't quite there yet.
Exactly. And there's this one massive final barrier standing in the way of the Allies,
Mm.
the Rhine River.
It really is the last major natural defense for Germany. And even though the Third Reich is collapsing, it's still dangerous.
Yeah.
Like the sources say, a dying animal, cornered, but still capable of lashing out.
Desperate. And for them, the Rhine isn't just a river, is it?
No, no, it's much more. It's deeply symbolic, part of their national identity, their history, and strategically, it's their last real hope, maybe to stall the Allies, force some kind of negotiation, or just drag the war out even longer.
Right. So for the Allied command folks like Montgomery, Patton getting across the Rhine is absolutely non-negotiable. It's the key to unlocking Germany's heartland.
It's mandatory for victory.
So the big question, and this is our mission for this deep dive, how on earth do you cross a river that's wide, flowing fast, heavily defended, and crucially, every single bridge has just been blown up?
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Historically, you'd expect a pause, a long, bloody effort to build new crossings under fire, maybe find a different route. Huge casualties.
But that's not quite what happened here, is it?
Not primarily. Our sources really emphasize that this victory wasn't just about battlefield tactics, it was about something else. Sheer industrial power.
Industrial power embodied by this really awkward-looking six-wheeled truck.
The DUKW, often called the Duck.
The Duck. This amphibious truck is what ultimately cracks the German defenses on the Rhine. Okay, let's really get into that. Starting with the challenge itself, why was the Rhine such a formidable obstacle? The Wall of Destiny, as the Germans called it.
Well, the psychological weight alone was immense. You have to understand, the Rhine has been the barrier in European warfare for centuries. Think Romans.
Right, armies just stopped there.
They did, for ages. Holding the Rhine meant controlling access to the core of Germany. It's a legendary defensive line.
And the Germans knew this intimately. They'd used it themselves back in 1940 when they invaded France.
Exactly. They understood its strategic value perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward to 45, and the shoe is entirely on the other foot. The Allies are facing the very geography the Germans exploited earlier.
And the physical conditions in March 45 were just brutal.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't some gentle stream. We're talking late winter, early spring.
Mm.
The river was swollen with meltwater and rain.
How wide are we talking?
In the key crossing zones, easily over 400 meters. That's, what, a quarter of a mile of fast-moving water?
A quarter mile, wow.
Yeah, and the current was strong, carrying debris, trees, wreckage. Really hazardous for any kind of small boat or temporary bridge.
And that's just the natural part. Then you have what the Germans did deliberately.
Ah, yes. The Wehrmacht engineers. They were thorough, professional.
They blew every single bridge.
Every significant one. From Switzerland all the way up to the Netherlands. Railway bridges, road bridges, systematically destroyed. Our sources describe just twisted metal, shattered concrete piers, often dumped right into the river to make things even harder.
A complete scorched earth policy on the crossings.
Textbook, leaving absolutely nothing usable for the Allies.
Okay, so huge natural barrier, deliberately destroyed infrastructure. What about the defenders on the other side?
Well, that's where the defender naturally has the advantage, right? The Germans held the eastern bank, often slightly higher ground.
So they could see everything coming.
Pretty much.
Right.
And they'd set up defenses. Concentrated artillery, anti-aircraft guns, the famous 88s, often used against ground targets by this point, and lots of machine gun nests dug in, protected.
Their aim was just to make the river a killing zone.
Exactly. Inflict maximum casualties, slow down any attempted crossing to a crawl, make it too costly to even try.
And this was all amplified by Nazi propaganda calling it the Wall of Destiny.
Mm-hmm. They were desperately trying to fuel resistance, telling their soldiers, no enemy will cross alive. It was about manufacturing resolve, buying time through sheer willpower and, myth-making.
It sounds desperate, but you also mentioned Allied weariness. That plays into this, right?
Hugely important context. Remember the timeline. D-Day was June 44. The Allies genuinely thought, or at least hoped, the war in Europe would be over by Christmas 44.
But it wasn't. Not even close.
No. And our sources really detail the setbacks. Think about Arnhem Operation Market Garden. A bold gamble for a quick end that failed spectacularly.
And the Hurtgen Forest?
Oh, the Hurtgen. Just brutal, grinding attrition. A death factory, some called it. Relatively small German forces tied down huge numbers of Allied troops in terrible conditions for months.
And then the big shock, the Battle of the Bulge.
Right. Hitler's massive, unexpected counterattack in the Ardennes. It chewed up Allied resources, inflicted heavy casualties, and crucially, it delayed the push to the Rhine by months.
So by March 45, the Allies weren't just tired. They were facing the grim reality that the Germans would fight fanatically for every inch.
Absolutely. They were battling physical exhaustion, dwindling replacements, and the psychological weight of knowing the enemy, even cornered, was still incredibly dangerous.
So crossing the Rhine was essential, but the cost looked terrifyingly high. Hitler's strategy was basically to make the river and German fanaticism buy him time.
Yeah, he was banking on geography, history, maybe Allied exhaustion leading to some kind of political split or a negotiated settlement that wasn't total surrender. He was relying on traditional military thinking. Hold a strong defensive line.
But the Allies had something up their sleeve that didn't fit that traditional thinking at all.
Exactly. Something the German high command, focused on, tanks and planes as the pinnacle of warfare, just couldn't really conceive of in terms of scale and impact.
And that brings us squarely to this unlikely hero, the DUKW, the Duck.
The DUKW. Yeah, the name itself, it sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? Sources say it's actually a manufacturer's code from GMC.
What does it stand for?
Let's see. D for the design year, 1942, U for utility vehicle, K for all-wheel drive, and W for dual rear axles.
Okay, so it's technical, but Duck definitely fits it better, visually speaking.
Oh, absolutely. The descriptions are great. Ugly, awkward, a bathtub with wheels. Basically, they took a standard, reliable GMC 6x6 truck chassis.
The workhorse truck of the U.S. Army.
Right. And they wrapped it in a watertight steel hull. A truck wearing a boat's skin, as one source puts it. Pure function over form.
Looks aren't everything, though. This awkward thing solved a massive, critical problem the Allies were facing early in the war.
It really did, especially in amphibious landings, starting around 1942.
Let's break down that problem. Why was getting supplies ashore so hard?
Well, think about it. Big supply ships, Liberty ships, they have deep drafts. They can't just pull up onto the beach, especially in places like North Africa or the Pacific Islands.
So they have to anchor offshore.
Right. Miles out sometimes. Then you had to unload cargo ammo, food, fuel, medical supplies onto smaller landing craft, like Higgins boats. These boats would ferry the stuff to the beach.
Okay, supplies reach the beach. Problem solved.
Not quite. Now the supplies are sitting on the sand, often under fire. You still need to get them inland to the troops. So you need trucks to come down to the beach, load everything again, and then drive off.
That sounds incredibly slow and inefficient. Yeah. And dangerous. Double handling, exposed the whole time.
Exactly. Slow, manpower intensive, and it created huge bottlenecks right on the beachhead, exactly where you're most vulnerable. They needed a way to bridge that gap ship to shore to frontline seamlessly.
One vehicle. Drive off the ship or near it, swim to shore, climb the beach, and just keep going inland.
That was the dream. And General Motors, known for their, mass production genius, got together with the U.S. military. And crucially, they brought in Sparkman and Stevens, a naval architecture firm, yacht designers from Massachusetts.
Yacht designers? That seems like an odd fit.
But it makes sense, right? They knew how to make things watertight, how to design efficient hulls for moving through water. So you blend Detroit's truck know-how with East Coast boat building expertise.
And the speed they did this at is just remarkable.
It's astounding. Our sources consistently highlight this. The first prototype, from initial concept to a working tested vehicle, took only 38 days.
38 days? That's insane for developing a completely new type of vehicle.
It really is. It speaks volumes about the wartime urgency, the focus, and maybe the American can-do attitude of the time. They weren't aiming for perfection. They were aiming for a fast, functional solution.
How did they manage it technically? Just slapping a boat hull on a truck sounds simpler than it must have been.
No, it was definitely more sophisticated.
Yeah.
They didn't just bolt on a shell. Key was integrating the drive systems. It had a special transfer case.
Okay, what did that do?
It let the driver switch power smoothly between the wheels for land travel, and a propeller mounted at the back for water travel. When it entered the water, the prop engaged, drive to the wheels might be disengaged, and sometimes the front wheels even helped with steering in the water, acting like rudders.
A dual drive system, essentially.
Right. But maybe the cleverest bit, especially for tough terrain like beaches or muddy riverbanks, was something called the Central Tire Inflation System, CTIS.
Central tire inflation, what's that?
It meant the driver, from inside the cab while moving, could inflate or deflate the tires.
Why would you need to do that?
Think about driving on different surfaces. On a paved road, you want high tire pressure for speed and efficiency.
Right. Less rolling resistance.
But hit soft sand or deep mud, and high-pressure tires just dig in. You get stuck instantly.
Ah, so you let the air out.
Exactly. Lowering the pressure makes the tire flatten out, creating a much bigger footprint. It's like putting on snowshoes. The DUKW could effectively float over soft surfaces that would trap a normal truck.
That's ingenious. That feature alone must have made a huge difference in getting off beaches or climbing out of rivers.
It was critical. It's what made it truly amphibious, capable of handling the transition zones. Water, mud, sand, hard ground. No need to stop and reconfigure.
Okay, let's talk performance numbers. Pretty decent on land, right?
Yeah, about 50 miles per hour on roads, like a regular truck. In the water, much slower, naturally around 6 miles per hour, using his propeller.
But the payload was key. 2.5 tons.
2.5 tons. That's a lot of ammo boxes, fuel drums, rations. Even small artillery pieces or jeeps could sometimes fit inside. It was incredibly versatile.
And it had already proven itself before the Rhine.
Oh yeah, extensively used in the Pacific, navigating shallow reefs that would rip the bottom out of conventional landing craft. Absolutely vital in the Italian campaign, dealing with all the rivers and canals there, especially during floods.
But the Rhine was going to be its biggest test yet, operating under direct, heavy fire in a major assault crossing.
The ultimate test, really. And this brings us to that deeper point the sources make about the industrial philosophies of the war.
The contrast between the Allies, particularly the U.S., and Germany.
It's stark, and the DUKW exemplifies it. The sheer numbers are the first clue. By 1945, the U.S. had produced over 21,000 DUKWs.
21,000 of this specialized amphibious truck.
21,000. Just think about that number. These weren't built one-off in some specialized military workshop.
No, this was Detroit, right?
Exactly. They were churned out by converted automotive factories. Stamped steel, assembly lines, mass production techniques applied to military hardware. It was, as the sources say, the arsenal of democracy in action, turning industrial might into military capability on an unimaginable scale.
And this is where that core contrast comes in. The German approach was fundamentally different.
Completely different mindset. Our sources often describe the German philosophy of war production as being like art or craftsmanship. They focused on engineering excellence, technical superiority, often creating very complex, high-performance weapons. Think of the Tiger tank or the Me-262 jet fighter. Incredible machines for their time.
But built differently.
Often built more slowly, with highly skilled labor, almost like custom pieces. By hand, one at a time, as one source puts it. They valued precision and quality above almost everything else.
Which sounds good, but has downsides in a total war.
Huge downsides. That focus on complexity and bespoke manufacturing meant slower production rates. It often led to poor reliability in the field because the designs were so intricate, and critically, a lack of standardization.
So if your amazing Tiger tank broke down,
Getting the right spare part could be a nightmare. Parts from one Tiger might not fit another. It required specialized mechanics. So a technically superior weapon could be sidelined for weeks, useless, waiting for a specific component. They produced fewer, arguably better, but harder to maintain pieces of military art.
whereas the American approach was war as industry.
Precisely. The emphasis was on reliability, simplicity where possible, ease of maintenance, and above all, mass production and interchangeability of parts.
Like the Sherman tank. Maybe not the best tank one-on-one against a Panther, but...
But they could build vastly more of them. They were reliable, easy to fix with standardized parts, and you could overwhelm the enemy with numbers. The DUKW fits this perfectly. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. It was rugged, and they could build thousands.
So if one DUKW got hit crossing the Rhine, there were 10 more right behind it. If it broke down, mechanics could likely fix it quickly with standard GMC parts.
Exactly. That's the industrial logic. And this sheer scale, this ability to produce 21,000 specialized vehicles like the DUKW, this was the capability that the German High Command, steeped in their quality over quantity mindset, simply couldn't grasp.
They couldn't imagine logistics on that scale.
It was unthinkable, according to some analyses. They saw the Allied buildup, sure, the artillery, the troops, but they expected a conventional, slow crossing attempt, and maybe a few points. They had no concept that the Allies were about to use industrial production to essentially pave the river.
Turn the river into a highway, as one source said.
That's the perfect description. They underestimated the sheer weight of material the Americans could bring to bear continuously because of vehicles like the DUKW.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the actual crossing. Operation Plunder. Mid-March 1945. The Allies are lined up along the Rhine.
Yeah, on a massive front, maybe 300 miles long. Time for the final push.
And it involved multiple major efforts, right?
Primarily two big ones. In the north, you had Field Marshal Montgomery's 21st Army Group, British, Canadians with Operation Plunder. Very large-scale, meticulously planned, heavy emphasis on firepower.
And further south.
You had General Omar Bradley's 12th Army Group, which included Patton's 3rd Army. Patton being Patton, he was looking for any opportunity for a rapid, aggressive crossing.
But regardless of who or where, the fundamental problem remained. Moving masses of troops, vehicles, tanks, and supplies across that river with no bridges.
A logistical nightmare, potentially. Tens of thousands of soldiers, hundreds of vehicles, and just mountains of ammunition, fuel, food needed on the far bank immediately.
And this is where the DUKW shifts from being just useful to absolutely essential.
It becomes operationally critical. Standard procedure, if bridges are gone, involves getting infantry across first in small boats, maybe assault boats. They establish a small bridgehead.
But they're vulnerable then, right? Lightly armed, limited supplies.
Exactly. Then you have the slow, dangerous process of building pontoon bridges under fire, which takes time, maybe days. During that time, the initial bridgehead is fragile. It can be wiped out by a German counterattack if they can't get reinforcements and heavy supplies quickly.
So the DUKWs bypassed this vulnerable phase.
That was the plan. They were the only way to ferry not just more infantry, but crucial heavier items. Machine guns, mortars, anti-tank guns, ammunition, medical supplies, communications gear across the river in large quantities during the initial assault phase, before the pontoons were ready.
They were the logistical lifeline for the first critical hours, even days.
Absolutely. Without that continuous flow provided by the DUKWs, any bridgehead would likely starve and collapse.
The sources mention specialized training for these DUKW crews. It wasn't just driving a truck into water.
No way. They were trained intensively, often in secrecy. They had to navigate that fast, debris-filled current, often at night, under artillery and machine gun fire. They were expected to run a constant shuttle service.
For how long?
The planning anticipated near-continuous operations for the first 72 hours. 3 days straight, back and forth, loading, crossing, unloading, returning. Unbelievable strain on men and machines.
Just relentless, driving into the dark river, engaging the propeller, navigating across, hopefully avoiding getting hit, finding the right landing spot on a muddy bank, unloading quickly, turning around, and doing it all again.
Over and over. It was a massive, coordinated, amphibious operation, just using trucks instead of dedicated landing ships, treating the Rhine like a two-way street from the first minute.
There's that quote you mentioned from an American officer. It really hits home.
Yeah, it's powerful. He said, "Without the ducks, we wouldn't have a bridgehead. Without a bridgehead, we wouldn't have Germany."
That says it all, really. The entire strategy hinged on this one, ugly vehicle's ability to sustain the crossing.
It wasn't about the glamour of the tanks initially. It was about the grunt work of logistics, getting stuff across so the tanks could cross later. If the supply chain breaks, the advance stops cold.
And this logistical surge capability was something the Germans just weren't prepared for. What was their situation on the eve of the crossing?
Pretty desperate. You look at someone like General Alfred Schlemm, commanding the German 1st Parachute Army in one of the key sectors. His forces were a shadow of what they once were.
What did he actually have?
Remnants of divisions, units severely under strength, filled out with teenage conscripts, even the Volkssturm old men, boys, barely trained, armed with maybe a rifle and a Panzerfaust anti-tank weapon. Minimal air support, critical fuel shortages, dwindling ammunition.
Yet Hitler's orders were clear. Hold the Rhine at all costs. How do you even try to do that?
You rely on the river itself. You rely on your prepared defensive positions, your artillery. German commanders hoped the river's difficulty, combined with their firepower, would inflict enough casualties and delays to maybe allow them to regroup somehow, or just make the Allied cost prohibitive.
They saw the buildup, the artillery concentrating.
They did. They knew an attack was coming. But they fundamentally misjudged its nature and speed. They expected a more traditional, slower, boat-based assault, followed by bridge building. They had, as the sources state, no idea that the Americans were about to turn that river into a highway.
They understood firepower, but not industrial-scale logistics.
Precisely. They were about to be overwhelmed not just by shells, but by sheer, non-stop delivery capacity.
Okay, let's go to the night itself, March 22nd, 1945. What was the atmosphere like?
Tense. Cold. You've got this biting wind coming down the Rhine Valley. The sound of artillery, near and far, is constant. On the Allied side, troops are huddled, waiting. The noise of engines, tracks, DUKWs moving into their final positions near the riverbank.
And on the German side?
Sentries, peering into the darkness, listening to the river, knowing something is imminent, but not what exactly. Expecting boats, maybe swimmers,
Yeah.
not what was actually coming.
And then the assault begins. How did it unfold?
With overwhelming force.
Hmm.
Just before dawn, usually. Massive artillery bombardments erupt, thousands of guns targeting the German positions on the far bank. The sky just lights up.
And the ducks go in.
Almost immediately. Under the cover of that barrage, hundreds of these DUKWs, olive drab, steel gray, just start rolling down the banks, hitting the water, propellers churning. Our sources use descriptions like an army of floating beasts swimming towards the German lines.
It must have been a terrifying sight for the defenders. Not just soldiers and boats, but vehicles driving out of the river.
And carrying supplies with them. That's the key. It wasn't just infantry landing, it was their support landing almost simultaneously. Machine guns, mortars, ammunition arriving on the beachhead from the first waves.
So the victory wasn't just about getting men across, it was about sustaining them instantly.
Exactly. That's the synthesis here. Industrial-scale logistics simply overwhelmed static defenses. The DUKWs delivered the necessary force and the continuous supply stream so quickly that the Germans couldn't react effectively.
They couldn't consolidate their defenses or launch coordinated counterattacks before the bridgehead was already too strong.
Right. Before the Germans could shift their limited reserves to the specific crossing points and bring effective fire to bear, the Allies were already established, dug in, and well supplied, thanks to that constant DUKW ferry service.
They were swamped by stuff, essentially.
Drowned in material, you could say. And once that initial foothold was secure and being constantly resupplied, it bought the engineers the time they needed to start building the heavy-duty pontoon bridges.
Which then allowed the tanks, the heavy artillery, the main force, to pour across.
And that was basically the end game in the West. Once tanks were across the Rhine in force, the German industrial heartland in the Ruhr was open, and organized resistance started to collapse very rapidly.
So this ugly duckling, the DUKW, didn't just help, it fundamentally changed the timeline. It accelerated the collapse.
It turned what could have been weeks or months of brutal fighting at the river into a crossing achieved in days. Historians generally agree that successful Rhine crossings signaled the rapid end of the war in the West.
And the core reason wasn't necessarily tactical genius on the spot.
It was arguably more about the manufacturing genius back in Detroit, Massachusetts. The ability to design quickly, build reliably, and produce 21,000 of these specialized machines. That industrial capacity was the weapon that truly broke the wall of destiny.
The industrial approach triumphs over the art of war approach in this case.
Decisively, all thanks to this awkward, essential machine.
An amazing story. Okay, let's wrap this deep dive up by pulling out the key nuggets for everyone listening. First, the Rhine itself more than a river, a huge psychological and physical barrier, the wall of destiny.
And the context of Allied weariness versus German fanaticism making the crossing both essential and incredibly daunting.
Second, the DUKW itself, an amazing example of rapid American innovation designed in just 38 days by combining truck know-how with boat design. Features like the central tire inflation were critical.
Right. Not just a truck and a boat shell, but a truly versatile amphibious vehicle.
And third, the sheer scale. Over 21,000 DUKWs produced. This highlights that fundamental difference. German art of war versus American industry of war. Mass production, standardization, logistics winning out.
Yeah, that contrast is maybe the biggest takeaway. The DUKW shows how logistical capability, driven by industrial scale, could overcome even formidable geographical and military obstacles. It wasn't about the fanciest weapon, it was about getting enough of the right stuff to the right place, continuously.
Turning a river into a highway, powered by industry.
Exactly.
So that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to chew on. We've seen how this seemingly mundane, ugly, awkward machine, the DUKW, played a pivotal role because it solved a core logistical problem at immense scale.
We tend to focus today on high-tech weapons, drones, cyber warfare, AI.
Right. But is there a modern equivalent of the DUKW, some piece of seemingly boring industrial technology, maybe something in shipping or global communication or supply chain software? Some ugly but essential workhorse that's quietly shaping global power or conflict right now?
It's a great question. What's the overlooked logistical linchpin of today? Is it a physical thing like standardized containerization or something less visible like algorithms managing global flows? And will we only recognize its true strategic importance after it's already decided the outcome of the next major challenge? Something to think about.